Hello, 8th graders. This video is to help you get started on the hypothesis and prediction sections of the science fair. The actual assignment can be located in Google Classroom, and the video you're watching right now is this link. You can also follow along on the instructions, which I'm going to show you in just a second. That's the second link here, which you can also get a paper copy of in my classroom. When you write your hypothesis and your prediction, you are going to write them in these two blanks, first for hypothesis, next for prediction, and you're going to submit this document when you are finished. Let's talk about what needs to go into it. The instructions look like this. For your hypothesis and your prediction, these are very short. Your hypothesis should be a sentence. Your prediction should be maybe 2 sentences, but most of yours will be a single sentence. So these two things together, if you have your experiment pretty well thought out, should take you just a couple of minutes to write out at the most. Let's talk about what needs to go in the hypothesis. It's important to remember that your hypothesis and your prediction are not the same thing. A hypothesis is a statement that is a possible explanation for the observations that you're making. It is not the same as a prediction. So that's the first number one thing to remember. So the way that you're going to write this thing is, first of all, make sure that it's something that's falsifiable and something that's testable. So in my examples that I've got below, I'm looking at ants, and I've noticed that sometimes ants are attracted to other things. Like I've noticed they like to crawl around on apples, but maybe there are not as many as there are on oranges or some other fruits. And so I started thinking about like what might be the cause of why some of these ants are all over the apples but not the other fruits. Well, maybe one of the explanations is that ants are attracted to certain fruit odors over other fruit odors. That's a good hypothesis because it's testable. I can get a bunch of fruit odors and see which way the ants go. And it's falsifiable. I could possibly get data that shows that they're actually attracted to all odors just the same. And so that would show that my hypothesis, my idea, wasn't actually the right thing. The way that you're going to test to see if it's testable is by looking and first asking, is your hypothesis based on an opinion? If it is, that's not a good hypothesis. An example of that would be like if you said, you should not cram for tests. Well, the should part is the problem. We can't test whether or not something should happen. It could be changed if you were to rewrite that to say, time spent studying immediately before a test can lower your test scores compared to time spread out days before a test. That is something that we can actually test. We can measure how many minutes somebody has spent studying and then look at their test scores. The next big bad category would be anything based on the supernatural. So my favorite example is this one. Throwing a virgin into an active volcano appeases the gods and prevents the volcano from erupting. Well, we can't know what appeases the gods because we don't have a way to measure the supernatural. So that's not a hypothesis that would work. And then, of course, anything that is unethical. So if your hypothesis was that humans need a functioning brainstem in order to survive, well, that's a testable hypothesis. We could take humans and remove their brainstem and see if they survive. But that's clearly not ethical to complete. So those are the 3 bad categories. Once you have your hypothesis, some of the things to look for in the rubric are basically that it's an explanation, that it's testable, falsifiable, and that you have good grammar. So read it out loud, and if it sounds good to your ears, it's probably got good grammar. Make sure it sounds nice. Once you have your hypothesis, then it's time to write your prediction. Your prediction is what you're going to write about when you have thought through how you're going to test your hypothesis. It should be specific to the type of experiment that you plan to do. Basically, you're saying, this is what I think will happen when I run my experiment. Unlike in class, so far we haven't included the because part of this, and now we're going to start to include it. You should have a because statement at the end of your prediction that should be based on some research that you've done. So now that you've hopefully gotten into your research review, you might know a little bit more about your topic. You're going to have a because statement that relates to that. Oftentimes, your prediction is going to follow an if, then, because format, which you might feel like you're used to, but it's going to be a little bit different for the science fair and in this class. So the best thing is probably to look at some examples. Let's go back to the ants. So if I wanted to think about my hypothesis where I was looking at ants and noticing that they're going to different fruits, and I want to see if they're attracted to different fruit odors, here's how we might write the hypothesis in the if, then, because format that you might be a little more used to. The if part is talking about the independent variable. If ants are attracted to different fruit odors over other fruit odors, then you come up with your prediction, what you think is going to happen. Then it is predicted that the same number of ants will be attracted to all the different scents. So this person thinks that that's not going to make a difference. The because part is where they're going to show that they've actually done some thinking or some research about this topic. So they looked and they researched markers, and they noticed in their research that they're all made of chemicals that only smell like fruit to humans. It's synthetic smells. And they don't think that ants are going to be able to smell it the same way because they know that they did research that ants have different smell organs or different way of smelling. Another way that you might write a prediction is this way. If ants are attracted to different fruit odors over other fruit odors, so they've got that part about their hypothesis, then it is predicted that more ants will be attracted to cherry, so they think that it's going to go one specific direction. But notice they've picked out the particular scent, that one of the particular scents that they're going to be testing. So this is specific to the experiment they plan to do. And again, their because statement is based on some research that they did. So some bad examples probably will help out just as much as some good ones, and because we can learn from them. So the first one, it says, if the smelling abilities of ants are tested, then ants will go toward the scent they like the most, which will probably be cherry. Let's unpack this. The part after if should be talking about your hypothesis. So if the smelling ability of ants are tested, well, the if is not the hypothesis. Hypothesis is a possible explanation to something you have observed. This is just saying if we test their smelling ability. That's not a hypothesis at all. The other problem is the fact that they say like the liking part, the scent that they like the most. Well, that's not what we're measuring in this experiment. We might be able to make an inference that the ones that they're going to is because they like it, but that's not what we're measuring. So that can't be the part in our, that can't be said in our prediction. Prediction makes a big assumption. How do we know that the ants go to a particular place because they like it? That's not something that we can necessarily measure. The next one that's got some problems is this one. If ants are attracted to different fruit odors over other fruit odors, then carpenter ants will be most attracted to cherry smells and fire ants the least. Well, the big problem here is that our hypothesis is testing whether or not ants are attracted to different fruit odors, not about the species. This prediction is talking about carpenter ants versus fire ants. That's not what this experiment is about. The experiment is about changing the different fruit odors. So this prediction doesn't even match the hypothesis. The last bad one says, if ants are attracted to picnics, then people will get itchy and want to leave their picnic. The biggest issues here is that the IV and the DV aren't clear in the prediction. So if ants are attracted to picnics, well, what is it about the picnics? Ants being attracted to picnics is technically a hypothesis, but since we cannot tell what the IV here would be, is it the blanket, the types of food, the fact that people are there too, what is the thing that's changing on purpose? Then it makes the prediction and hypothesis pretty weak. The same thing with the DV. We can't tell what the DV is. It says people will get itchy and want to leave the picnic. So we don't know specifically what they're talking about. Are we measuring how many people get itchy, how itchy they get? What's the thing being measured? It's not clear about what this person thinks is going to happen, and we can't tell what because we can't tell what their variables are. Make sure that as you're turning or thinking through your prediction, you're checking through the rubric. I'm looking at your format. You need to be using the if, then, because statement. And if you don't do that, and as long as it has all the parts and pieces, I'm happy as long as all the pieces are in there. Your prediction has to be connected to your hypothesis. You also have to have a because statement, and it needs to show me that you've done some research. And then, of course, the grammar and sentence flow. Good luck.